Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be going over how to make a skin for the mobile game Brawl Stars. In this video, I'm going to be working on a simple skin for the character B, ultimately ending up with something like this, a sort of pilot-inspired design. I'm going to be going over the entire process from start to finish, giving tips and tricks that you might find helpful in modeling, texturing, rigging, and uploading. If you are here, you are probably already aware, but just in case you aren't, Supercell, the creators of Brawl Stars, Clash of Clans, Boom Beach, and Heyday, have a special website called Supercell Make, where you can submit your character and environment designs to be possibly put into their games. Every couple of months, they put on what's called a campaign, which is an opportunity for anyone to submit a design for a specific character or environment in one of their games. Right now, at the time I'm making this video, there is a campaign for the character Nita in the Brawl Stars game. If your skin design is selected by the development team, you earn a minimum of $10,000 up to a maximum of $50,000. All you need to do is get 1,000 votes on your design during the voting period, which is actually not too difficult as long as you get your idea in before the voting starts. Right now in the Nita campaign, submissions are still being accepted for a couple of days. I have one in the mix right now myself. It kind of sucks, but it was a lot of fun to make. In order to make a skin, you're going to need some 3D modeling software. I would highly recommend Blender, which is a free, open source, powerful program that you can model, sculpt, texture, and render in. It is completely free and doesn't require a sign up. I would also suggest having an image editing or painting software as well. I would recommend something like Krita, which like Blender is a free open source program that gives a lot of the same tools as Photoshop. You can color directly in Blender as well if you'd like, but this will give you a little bit more oomph. Anyways, let's get started. Okay, to start, you're going to need to create a Supercell ID. This is a special ID that allows you to link game progress and multiple accounts across multiple devices. It's also required in order to download the game assets needed to make a skin. To create one, you're going to need to go to the game settings area of any of the Supercell games on your phone. So open up your Supercell game on your phone. Once it loads up and you're at the main menu, look for the game settings button. In Brawl Stars, it's up in the top right corner here. Now click on the Supercell ID button here. Now, if you haven't signed up for a Supercell ID yet, your screen will probably look like this instead. Just click on the Register Now button and follow the instructions to set it up. Once you have your Supercell ID set up, let's go to the make.supercell.com website and log in with our new ID. Once you're logged in, go up to the Create area here and then click on the Brawl Stars area. Here you will find a lot of important information regarding submission and character guidelines. I would highly recommend you actually read this if you are serious about your submission. Under submission guidelines, you will find information and reminders on keeping characters' DNA and styling consistent with the original design. An example given here by Supercell is the fact that Bo's eyes are never shown. So any skin you should make should also work to conceal his eyes. This plays into what is sometimes referred to as the character's in-game glance value. A character's skin should not alter the overall feel so much that a player glancing at them during gameplay is not able to reasonably determine which character it is. There's also information regarding poly count limits, texture conventions, and file submission, which we'll go over a little bit later in the video. There's also a section on specific character guidelines, also very important if you are serious about your submission. For B, for instance, an important element to note would be that her helmet and jumpsuit should match. And finally, there is an asset download section where you can download the in-game model and textures so that you can work on them in your 3D modeling software of your choice. Okay, so once you have downloaded the assets of your choice, you need to navigate to where you saved the zip file and unzip it. You should see a few different files here, an FBX file, which is the model, a ping file, which is the texture map, and a PSD file, which is a Photoshop version of the ping texture map with the different layers. Okay, so now let's import the FBX file into our 3D software. In Blender, go to File, then Import, then select FBX from the drop-down menu, then navigate to where you save the FBX file. And there you go, the model should be visible in your viewport. To see the textures, you can click up here on the Material Preview mode. This will add some generic lighting for you quickly, which is very handy. I noticed with this particular model, the scale of it is quite small, which means that when you zoom in, you may notice some clipping or disappearing like this. To fix this, press N on your keyboard for the Tool Settings side panel, go to the View tab, and then make the clip start number a little bit smaller. I'm going to go from 0.1 to 0.01. Now when you zoom in, it doesn't disappear like before. In this section of the video, I'm just going to go over some general tips and tricks that I find useful in modeling, as it's likely that you're probably working on another character and your own design. Here I'm starting off with some simple goggles on the helmet. I Shift A and add in a single vertex, and then turn on snapping, set it to face mode, and turn on project individual elements. Then I add a mirror modifier over on the right, and then pressing E to extrude one vertex out, then turning on clipping on the mirror modifier, make sure that the vertices meeting in the middle merge and don't overlap. Now pressing E to extrude vertices into the shape of the goggles. The snap to face sticks the selected vertex to the closest surface, in this case the helmet. You can get the single vertex option by enabling the built-in Blender add-on called Add Mesh Extra Objects. You can do this by going up to the Edit Preference menu and then the add-on section. Selecting two vertices and then pressing F will create an edge in between them. Here I'm selecting two vertices and then pressing E to extrude a face out. And then by enabling the built-in Blender add-on called F2, when you select a corner vertex and press F, Blender will automatically create a quad face for you, which is very handy. I'll use this to create faces all the way around. Now I'm pressing Alt and left middle mouse button to select an entire edge loop at once, and then E and then S to extrude and scale inwards like this. Then I'm going to select the Poly Build tool here over on the left, which allows you to quickly select and move vertices around. Once you have faced everything up like this, you can press A and select all the vertices, and then press E to extrude everything upwards like this. Make sure to turn off snap to face before doing so. You can press Alt Z to toggle X-ray mode, which will allow you to see through your model. Holding Shift while left clicking objects will allow you to select multiple objects. Pressing I allows you to inset faces like this. If your model is looking really faceted and jagged, you can go up to the Object menu and select Shade Smooth to smooth everything out. You may still want to have some sharp edges, however, and if that's the case, tab back into Edit mode and select the edges that you want to be more defined. Then press Ctrl E and select Mark Sharp. The edge should turn blue like this. You may also want to turn on Auto Smooth over on the Object Data Properties tab, and in the Normal section, tick the Auto Smooth box here. Now here I thought I'd make a backpack. Shift A and adding a single vertex again, with a mirror modifier and clipping turned on. Then I press E to extrude a vertex and form the shape of the backpack. Selecting the two middle vertices, then F to create an edge in between them. Then I start extruding faces inwards like this. You can press Ctrl R to add in control or edge loops like this. If you add too many, you can press X to pull up the delete menu and select edge loop to delete just the edge loop. Very handy when modeling. Pressing F to make a face. Once you have the general outline formed, you can press A to select all, then E to extrude like this. Then you can select some of the interfaces and E to extrude again to form a sort of smaller pocket. Like we did for the goggles, you can press Alt and left middle mouse button to quickly select edge loops, and then press Ctrl E and Mark Sharp to create sharper defined edges on your model. Very handy method when doing low poly modeling. Making a little pocket on the side by selecting the faces in face select mode up here, and then pressing I to inset, then E to extrude. Okay, I'm done with the shaping of the backpack. Let's select the original backpack. Tab into Edit mode and then press L to select all the linked vertices of the backpack, then press X to delete. Here I'm pressing L over the ears and antennas as well to quickly select all the vertices, and then X to delete again. To keep things simple on this particular skin, I'm going to reuse the zipper object, tabbing into Edit mode and then G to move it into its new position on the new backpack. I'm going to reuse the B object here and just do some light reshaping using proportional editing up here, or O on your keyboard. After deleting some of the parts I don't want, I'm going to Alt left click one of the middle edge loops and then press G to move. If you play with your scroll wheel, you'll see a gray circle like this appear. This is the area of influence of the proportional editing. I'm going to move it up and start forming the general shape of a stylized, cartoony missile. Here I want to add some fins on the missile that are symmetrical to make it so that when I add the mirror modifier to my fin, it flips it over to the other side of the missile. I'm going to press Shift S to move the 3D cursor to the origin point of the missile. You can do this by selecting an object, pressing Shift S, and then selecting Cursor to Selected. Now when you Shift A and add in a single vertex, the object's origin point will be at the 3D cursor. This is important as when you add in a mirror modifier, it will mirror over this origin point, meaning your fins will match the body of the missile. The fins I just created here are technically a separate object, currently called vert.003. I want them to be a part of the object called bgeo. To merge them, select the new object first, and then shift select the object you want it to be a part of, and then press Ctrl J to join them. Now all of the geometry is under the bgeo object, which is important when it comes time to create our FBX file. Okay, with our modeling done, let's move on to UV unwrapping. To start, let's go to the shading tab and select one of the original objects with the character_matte material assigned to it. Now click here to create a new image. I'm going to name it UV Grid. You may want to change the size to 2048 by 2048, as that is what Supercell uses as the raw resolution for its textures in Photoshop. They then decrease the resolution to 1024 by 1024 for the game. In the event that your skin design wins, Supercell may ask for the raw resolution Photoshop or Krita file that you have. For this example, I'm just going to keep it at 1024. I'm going to disable alpha as that relates to transparency, which I'm not going to use here. And then under the generated type, I'm going to select UV Grid. Now you'll see a checkered pattern on our model instead of the colors. This helps us better understand how our textures and colors will look on the model. I'm going to now select our new objects, the goggles and chin strap, and here I'm going to select the material that came with the model, character_matte. All of our characters' objects should have the same material, character_matte, assigned to it. You may notice that our new objects don't have the checkered pattern on them, only the parts of the model that are still original. To fix this, let's go to the UV editing tab. In the 3D viewport on the right, make sure to go to the viewport shading mode and change it to the material preview, or you won't be able to see the checkered pattern, which is important here. To unwrap our object, let's select our new object and tab into edit mode. I'm going to press A to select all, and then U and select unwrap from the menu that pops up. Over on the left, you'll see our goggles get flattened out like a piece of paper. The checkered pattern shows up a little bit better, but it's still really stretched out and uneven. The goal here is to get the checkered pattern as even and uniform as possible. You can achieve this by marking seams and deleting faces that will not be seen. Here, I'm deleting some of the faces on the back of the goggles that won't be seen, as you want to try to be somewhat efficient with your space on the UV map. To mark seams, select a hard edge where you expect two different surfaces or materials to meet, and then press Ctrl E and select Mark Seam. Here I'm selecting the edge between where I have the lens of the goggles and the frame meeting. Now I'll press A to select everything, then U and select Unwrap. You can also select Live Unwrap for it to unwrap automatically whenever you place a new seam. You'll notice on the left, we now have the shape of our lenses right where we just placed our seams. The checkered pattern on the lenses is now quite even and uniform, which is great. So now it's just time to continue to place more seams on our new objects until the squares are uniform throughout. This may take a little bit of experimentation depending on what shapes you've made for your model. If you don't like how a seam affects the unwrap, you can just select it again, press Ctrl E and select Clear Seam. Once you have everything unwrapped, we now need to adjust our UV islands to make sure that they all fit inside the UV space without overlapping. A UV island is basically each separate item you see over on the left viewport. Generally, you don't want these islands to overlap. When I select all of our objects, tab into edit mode and A to select all, you can see some massive overlap. It looks very messy. I would suggest enabling the UV sync selection option here in the top left. This will allow you to select UVs in either window and have the corresponding UV highlight in the other. Supercell has already had a professional artist UV unwrap the character, so the overlap we see here is solely due to our newly created objects. If I select the goggles on the right, you can see them highlight in the left window. With my cursor in the left window, I'm going to press G to move them out of the UV space for now. I'll do the same thing for the other new objects. like the backpack, the fins on the missile, and the chin strap on the helmet. With all of the UVs of our newly created objects out of the UV space, it's time now to scale them down and move them back into the open areas on the map. If you want to keep things simple and easy, I would not suggest moving any of the UV islands of the original model, like the body and the face, as they are already aligned perfectly with the texture map. If you move any of the original islands here, you're going to have to do a little bit more editing later when it comes to texturing and painting color. Up to you. If you want to keep your UVs really tidy and organized, on parts of the model that you would expect to be straight, you can use the align function to straighten them up for easier painting. To do so, I would suggest selecting the object, then selecting the edge you want to be straight, then go to the UV menu at the top and select split. Now select the edge you want to be straight, right click and pick align X or Y, whatever is applicable for you. Here you can see I'm turning the UV island of the headband into a cleaner rectangle, which will make texturing and painting easier a little bit later. You can press Shift R to repeat the last operation you did. In this case, I have just used the align Y operation. Because I want to do all of the other edges here, I just select the next edge and press Shift R to quickly align all the other edges all the way up. Okay, so now you can start moving some of the UV islands into the open spaces on the map. You can use the same transform shortcuts as for the 3D objects: G to move, R to rotate, and S to scale. Okay, so once you have everything spaced out and not overlapping, it's time to export our UV layout so we can paint a little bit easier in an external program like Krita. You can just paint directly in Blender if you'd like as well, but I like to use something like Krita as I like to work in layers. So with everything selected, go up to the UV menu here and select Export UV Layout, and then select all UVs up on the right here. You can also select the resolution here as well. If you intend to work at the raw 2048 by 2048 size like Supercell does, you'll want to make sure your UV layout is the same size as well. Okay, so now we can start changing and adding colors and shadows to our character in Krita. You can open up Krita and navigate to where you saved the ping or Photoshop file and open it. Now open up your UV layout image you just made in Blender, and then import it into the texture map as a separate layer. Now I'm going to add in a new layer and use it to cover up the parts of the original color map that relate to our newly created objects like the goggles and backpack. I'm just going to use the polygon selection tool and trace an area around the UV islands of our newly created objects, and then fill it with a solid black color to sort of create a clean slate for me to paint new colors on. Once you've done that, you may want to test just to make sure that you have everything blocked out correctly. You can hide the UV layout layer and then export it to a ping file. Now you can go back into Blender, and with your cursor over the color map, just press Alt-R to reload or refresh the image. Because we still have the UV grid image assigned to our character underscore matte material, we need to go back to the shading tab and click here and select our texture map B underscore text. Back to Krita, let's start changing and adding some colors. I'm going to go with a military feel, so I'm going to select the fill tool and then change the fill type to color. Then select the color you want and then click on the areas you want to change. By changing the mode to color, this allows you to retain the shadow and lighting information that the Supercell artist already painted. This both saves time for you and also makes sure your skin better matches the overall style of the game. This is also really good for me because I suck at painting. You can also change colors by using the polygon selection tool and tracing a selection around the color you want to change. Then you can go up to the color menu in your image editing software and go to something like the HSV adjustment area and play with the hue, saturation, and lightness values. Similar to the color fill bucket, this allows you to retain the shadow and lighting information that is already there. Here I'm continuing with more blocking out of the base colors of each newly created object, mainly the goggles and backpack. You can draw in designs as well while you're at it. Here I'm drawing in an open mouth with some teeth and a tongue to make the helmet look a little bit more like a cute character, much like the original helmet. Here I'm opening up the original B_text image and cutting out some elements of the original design so I can incorporate it into mine. This sort of ties my new design to the old a little bit better. Here I'm going to use this smiley face thing as a sort of patch for the backpack. To make sure it's aligned where I want it, I go back into Blender, select the backpack, and with UV sync selection on, I'm checking to see which faces on the backpack correspond to the UV layout. Now I can go back to Krita and line up the smiley face so it looks like a patch on the flap of the backpack. Here I'm using the gradient fill tool to give the subtle effect of some top-down lighting. And then here I've created a new layer I've called Shadows, which I've switched to multiply mode. And then with the fill bucket and a brown color to match the goggles, I'm filling in the edges to give a cartoony shadow look, which is my terrible attempt at trying to match the art style of the game. Okay, that's good for the painting. To really give our skin design some extra pizzazz, I'm going to pose the character more dynamically. This will make the thumbnail of your submission look a little bit more enticing. Before we pose it, I'm going to do a save as and call this new file BV4 posed. What we have right now will be the model that we upload to the Supercell website, version 3. As Supercell does not require the character models to be rigged, they do that themselves. So this V4 posed file, we will add a rig and pose just for the purposes of the thumbnail. You won't upload this version. Just a quick aside, you may notice that my goggles object is not grouped with the rest of the other objects. We need to group it or else our upload to the website will not work properly. To group it, select the new object, then shift select the geo item on the right, and then press Ctrl P and select object to parent the items. Now you'll see it's in the group with the others. Okay, to pose the model, if you haven't already, you're gonna need to enable the Rigify add-on. So go up to the Edit Preferences menu and go to the Add-on section, type Rigify in the search menu, and then tick the box here. Then click on Save Preferences. Now press Shift A, then go down to Armature and select Human Meta Rig. It's huge right now since the B model is scaled very small, so just zoom out and then press S to scale this down. Over on the right, click here and then expand the viewport display section and tick the in front box to have the armature display over the model for easier alignment. Now press the Tab key to enter edit mode. Tick the X symmetry box up here on the right, and then position the armature like this over the model. I do have a more in-depth, slower paced rigging video. I'll put a card up above and a link below. If you need a little bit more explanation of how to line things up, how to generate the rig, and how to work with some of the rig's handles, please check out that video. You can press H to hide bones to make lining things up easier. Most of the bones you should not delete here, as if you do, it will interfere with the generation of the animation rig, which we will do in just a minute. Some of the bones you can delete are the 2 breast bones, for example. Again, I do have a more detailed rigging video. Card should be above if you need more information and a slower pace. And you can also delete the face bones. If you do delete the face bones, make sure to also Alt-Z and delete the face bone inside the head bone here, or else the animation rig will not generate in the next step. An important thing we need to do as well is clear the transforms of the rig and model and make sure that they are all 1.0. So select the rig and then press Ctrl A and select all transforms. The scale transforms on the right should all go to 1.0. Select all the objects and do the same. To avoid the bone heat weighting error, make sure to select everything and scale it up by a factor of 5 or 10. It doesn't matter. Make sure to select everything and clear the transforms again. Once you've cleared the transforms of all the objects, select the meta rig in object mode, go to the rig tab, and click on the generate rig button. You should have a new, very complicated looking skeleton now, which is called just rig over on the right layer panel. Now select all the objects first, then shift select the rig last, then press Ctrl P and select automatic weights. If your model does this, it means, like me, you missed clearing the transforms of one of the objects. In this case, I forgot to clear the transforms of the character item over on the right layer panel. It has a 90-degree rotation transform and a 0.01 scale transform, which results in the model being rotated 90 degrees and scaled up by 100 times when we parented it. So to fix this, select everything again and clear the transforms so everything is 1.0. Then select all the objects again first, then shift select the rig last, then Ctrl P and select automatic weights. Now select the rig and switch to pose mode up here. Now when you click on the different handles of the rig, your model should move like this. The issue here though is Blender's automatic weighting isn't perfect. As I rotate the head, you can see that the helmet, particularly over the ears, doesn't totally follow. To fix this, select the helmet and then go over to the Object Data tab on the right. You'll see a bunch of new vertex groups here named after each bone. Now change from Object to Weight Paint mode, and you'll see a heat map on the helmet appear. So switch out of weight paint mode to edit mode, press A to select all the helmet, and then scroll down to the vertex group called spine.006, which is the head bone, and click assign. Now the head bone has 100% influence over the helmet, which you can see when I switch back to weight paint mode, the helmet is completely red. The hotter or more red the color, the greater a given vertex group on the right has over that particular part of the selected object. The rotation still isn't perfect, and that's because there are other bones with influence over the helmet still. As I scroll through the bones on the right, you can see when I get to the shoulder and upper arm bones, some greens start showing up over the ear. Again, this means that the arm and shoulder bones have some light influence over the helmet, which we don't want. So now let's click on the remove button. Now when I go back into pose mode and rotate the head, the helmet follows very nicely. Now let's move on to the head and body. Select the body, switch to weight paint mode, and then scroll to spine.006, which is the head. To check the influence the head bone has over the face, we can see that it does not have total influence, so let's switch to edit mode, select all the vertices on the head like this, then with spine.006 selected over on the right, click assign. Make sure that the weighting is also at 1.0. You may want to also select some of the other bones around the head bone and click remove as well. Now a quick check by going back into weight paint mode, and we can see just spine.006 has 100% influence over the face, and no other bones appear to have any influence, which is good. Now we have a problem with the eyes of the missile also following the head bone, which I don't want. So selecting the missile, switching to weight paint mode, and then scrolling through the vertex groups over on the right. We can see a whole bunch of bones have some light influence over the missile, which I don't really want at all. So I'm going to switch back to edit mode now, select all the vertices, and then I'm going to scroll through the vertex groups and click remove. And with that done, you can see as I rotate the head bone now, the missile doesn't move at all. Okay, so now with everything weight painted properly, let's have our character strike a pose. To move the character around, I find that the yellow and red handles are the easiest to use, but feel free to experiment. If you want a tiny bit more explanation, again, please check out my other rigging tutorial, which provides a more kind of in-depth run through of some of the handles here. Card should hopefully be above and link below. Okay, once you have struck the perfect pose, let's add a camera so that we can render a thumbnail. Shift A and select camera, then I press numpad 0 to enter into camera view. To frame my character a little bit easier, I'm going to press N and then go to the View tab, and then under View Lock, I'll tick the camera to View box. This makes it so that you can orbit and zoom around the viewport as you normally would, but control the camera at the same time. Down here in the camera properties tab, you can change the focal length to make the image a little bit more dynamic. Now up here in the output properties tab, you can change the image size. Here I'm just going to make it a square 1080 by 1080. And now I'm going to frame what will be the first thumbnail image on the Supercell site. Okay, with the camera set, let's now add some lights. Press Shift A and add in a light of your choice. I'm going to go with an area light. Then I'm going to position it so that it's pointing at my model at an angle like this and offset to the left. Now I'm going to switch to render mode to see how my lights look in real time. Here under the World tab, I just have a simple white color background set to 0.4. Now under the Object Data Properties tab, you can change the power and size of the light. As you can imagine, the higher the power, the brighter it will be. To control the sharpness and intensity of the shadows, you can adjust the size of the light. So I'm going to call this first light my key light. Now I'm going to Shift D and duplicate this light, rotate it around and position it to the other side of the character. I'll call this one my fill light and then set it to half the power of my key light. Then one more time, Shift D to duplicate and position this light like this, pointing from behind the model. I'll call this my backlight. Generally, this should also be half the power of your key light, but you can obviously experiment to get different moods. Then I'm going to select all three lights, Shift D them all at once, and then move them over the missile so that it's not too much in the shadows. I'm also going to lower the power and size of these lights so that it's not too bright and blown out on the missile either. Okay, so with the scene set, let's render. Pretty easy. You can go up here to the render menu and select render image, or just press F12 on your keyboard. In the window that pops up, go to image and then save image. So this will be our main thumbnail image for the Supercell website. Let's do a couple more renders for our gallery images. I would suggest doing a couple of images from a top-down view to emulate the in-game camera and let the person voting see how it will look in real time as they use it. So I'm going to do one from up high and behind like this, as if the character is running up the map, maybe to grab a gem. F12 to render the image, then save image, then spinning the camera around to the front as if they're running down the map, maybe running away from a Colt Super. F12 to render and then save image. Okay, so on the Supercell site, the main thumbnail size should be 728 by 780 pixels. If you use another size, your thumbnail will get cut off. Gallery images are the images people will see once they click on your thumbnail. They are 1728 by 1250 pixels, so we'll need to keep both these image sizes in mind. Also, I think a nice touch is to use some of Supercell's company branding. You can download high quality pings of their company and game logos at supercell.com/en/4media. Here I'm going to download the Brawl Stars logo. Okay, so I think we're ready to compose our thumbnail image. Here I'm in GIMP, another image editing or painting software you could use. I'm going to go File, New, and I'm going to set the size to 728 by 780. I totally screwed up here and put 790 by accident. It should be 780. Now let's grab our thumbnail render and pull it into our new file and scale it as you please. For the background, I'm going to go with a simple gradient fill set to radial, which will give us a circular gradient effect, which I think is nice. Now let's grab the Brawl Stars logo and put it in the corner. And you may also want to give your skin design a catchy name. I'm going to go with Bomber B since she looks kind of like a bomber pilot now. I kind of screwed up here as I later realized the Supercell website actually recommends you don't put any text on your thumbnail images. So this probably isn't the best idea, I'll leave it up to you. I would recommend as well increasing the saturation and contrast of your renders to really make them pop. The characters in-game have a small black outline around them to help your skin look more like the in-game version. I'm going to use the fuzzy select tool on the layer where I have the character render. Then I'm going to invert my selection, then grow my selection by 4 or 5 pixels. Then on a separate new clean layer, I'll fill this selection in with black, giving my model a nice black outline just like the game. For the gallery image, I'm going to go File, New, and set it to 1728 by 1250 to match the Supercell site. And here I'm going to use the thumbnail image again on the left, and then also pull in my top-down in-game view renders as well to give the voters a more comprehensive idea on how the skin looks. Okay, so with the thumbnail and gallery images done, let's get ready to upload to the Supercell site. We need to now prepare the FBX and zip files for uploading. I'm going to first create a new folder I'm going to call Final, and I'm going to pull in my edited b_text ping file into this new folder. Now in Blender, I'm going to go to the shading tab. Here you can see I have the original b_text ping and my edited b_text ping.001. To clean up the file, I'm just going to delete both. Go up here on the right and select Blender File, and then expand the images area and right click and delete both of the texture files there to clear them out and avoid any possible texture mishaps when uploading. Now here in the image texture node, select Open and navigate to the b_text ping file again in the newly created Final folder. Now over in the 3D viewport, select all the objects of your model like this, then over to File and Export, and then select FBX. Navigate to your Final folder, rename your file to whatever you want, and make sure to tick the Limit to Selected Objects box. The rest you can leave as default and press Export FBX. Now you should have your ping texture file and the FBX file in the Final folder. Select them both and select Send to Compressed Zip folder. Now you're ready to upload your creation. Go to the Supercell site, click on Upload, then click on the Campaign box. Now just drag and drop your zip file into the box here. If everything was set up right, you should see your model pop up in the 3D preview window. Now you can upload your thumbnail image and your gallery image, fill out the name, description, and other required information, and then click Submit Creation and you're done. And that's it for this video. Hopefully you have your skin design all nicely modeled and painted, some enticing gallery images, and a working FBX file, all uploaded onto the Supercell website with a beautiful looking 3D preview, ready for that 10 grand. A couple of shoutouts this week. Shout out to Torin Astorga on Instagram, who is back at working in Blender again and learning how to sculpt with his take on the bear tutorial. Love those wide set eyes, looks kind of mean. And to Random Crunk Boy on Instagram, who took it from the window to the wall with his spot on sculpt of the bear. Great job to both of you guys. Thanks for the shoutouts. If you'd like to be featured here, just tag me somewhere and I'll put you in my next video. Feel free to ask questions below. I try and answer all of them, and sometimes I actually help. What? If you want to share your art or ask a question, I have a little group on Facebook going. Link is below. Or you can just hit me up on social media somewhere. I love seeing your guys' stuff. I have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Twitch, Gumroad, and Udemy as well. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I hope it helped, and see you in the next one.